One of the things that is occurring through this whole virus crisis is a tremendous lesson in the intersection of science and public policy. But I think the lesson is a little different than what most people are thinking at this moment. And over the long term, we're going to settle into something that isn't what we expect right now. See, the way the conflict usually plays out is as a conflict. That is, the eggheads with the fancy degrees and all that tell people what they have to do and forcibly control them and really interrupts the whole process of a democratic republic, of the people deciding what happens. Do we have experts that tell us what to do, or do we have the people making decisions for themselves? That's not what's happening here. That's not what it's been about from the very beginning. And looking at it through that lens is, I think, very destructive. What has been going on through this lockdown is simply an effort to buy time. We were confronted with a situation that we really didn't understand. We really didn't know what to do. But we did know that if we just let it rip through the population, that horrible things would happen. At the far end, we have a complete lockdown where nobody does anything. And at the other end, we have just let it rip, let it develop herd immunity, and see what happens. Now, that far end was originally the policy of the United Kingdom, and that's what they were going to do until Boris Johnson was convinced that a whole lot of people were going to die. And they switched all the way to the other side of it. And for the last 3 months, a little bit longer here in the Bay Area, we have been trying to figure out what exactly we can do. Okay, so how has it gone? Do we have a vaccine? No, we don't. Do we have some effective treatments that doctors have figured out during the time? Yes, in fact, there are some steroids that are being used. There are times they know a little bit more about when to use the intubation. There are procedures that are in place to hopefully prevent hospitalization in the first place. That's great. That's really useful. Have we learned how to slow the spread of the virus? Yes, wearing masks, social distancing, washing our hands all the time. These are all still very good things, and they can slow the spread of the whole thing. Fabulous. We've learned that. Does the lockdown, the extreme end of it, destroy our economy? Oh, yes, it does. Does this burden fall disproportionately on those who were already struggling and basically about ready to fall over a cliff, thus exacerbating tremendous social pressure that's going to explode at any moment? Yes, it certainly has done that and will continue to do that. So, being at this end of it, where we're all closed down, isn't something that we want to stay at for a long time. But we've learned enough that we can start moving towards an opening, a careful opening, where we can treat people, we can prevent them from getting it in the first place, we can promote wellness. We have made fairly good use of the time. We don't have a cure, we don't have a vaccine, but it's been good. Now, one of the things that has not been a feature of this whole event is our officials at the very top end of things that are making the decisions on lockdowns, etc., admitting that we really don't know what we're doing. It's been kind of implied, but it's rare that people have come out and said, we don't know. They're going to be slow to do that. It's their job to know what to do, it's their job to make decisions, and frankly, that's an old fashioned model. I wish that that were to change because ultimately, I do think this is the lesson that we have of the whole thing. Or, as Franklin Roosevelt once said, if I can do my FDR voice, it is common sense to take a method and try it. If it fails, admit it frankly and try another. But above all, try something. I like my Franklin Roosevelt voice. See, that was the principle of the New Deal. We have a bad situation. We need to do something. We need to make it work. All right. Now, some people will argue that during the New Deal that they made things worse in the long term. In fact, that's what I'm arguing right now, that printing so much money has been dangerous in the long term, that we need to sit down and really rethink about everything about our economy and how it serves the people that are the bedrock of everything. The skills, the ambition, the drive, everything that the ordinary people do is what actually makes an economy, especially a technology driven one. And that gets sort of to the difference between not so much science and public policy, but science, technology, and public policy. We often confuse science and technology in our world. And this is unfortunate because science is a process of asking questions, a formalized scientific method for putting out a hypothesis and having a way of testing it and evaluating it and seeing if it works. Technology, on the other hand, is skills, the ability to do something. Very often it's applying what has been learned through the scientific method, but not necessarily. Sometimes you just sort of wing something and say, hey, wow, this was an unanticipated result. And I can give you a patent, right? Um, but technology itself is something that is an ability to get something done. Okay, when it becomes implemented on a regular basis, it becomes a routine or even a habit. If it's implemented by many people, it becomes a system. And well, systems are what government is made up of. And governments are necessarily slow to change. I mean, they have to be by nature. But in a time of rapid change, government gets left way, way behind, which is one of my big concerns. And the fragility of our economy, I think, is a reflection of the fact that we haven't changed rapidly enough. So, how do we change? How do we change more rapidly while keeping an eye on that long term? This, I think, is something that is going to come out of this. As we learn how to cope with the virus, we are confronting the fact that our leaders in a democratic republic really don't have all the answers. They can listen to the scientists, they can listen to what has been done. The doctors will tell them what's most appropriate and make reasonable decisions based on that. For example, Governor Abbott from Texas, who is no liberal. I mean, the guy is very much a libertarian, pro freedom, pro business, all of that kind of stuff. Was confronted with the testing rate. He said, "Look, if we on our tests have more than 10% of them turn out positive, we know we don't have a handle on this whole thing, and we're going to have to just shut down all of the bars and really increase the amount of social distancing in Texas." That came true. More than 10% of the tests came back positive, and everything got shut down. We're not ready yet to reopen. We're not figuring it out yet. We had a series of tests that determined the proper course of action. This is a really good thing. And there isn't a politics of left and right to it, right? This is what I think we're learning in the whole process. It's going to make us better. Applying science, where we say, well, what if we try this in the economy? Will this improve opportunity for people? And this is how we will judge that. And we will look at it in 2-3 years' time and see if we are meeting our goals. This is something that can be used for, I mean, the scientific method can be applied broadly. It's more of a mindset than it is a set of procedures. And I hope that we're learning that. In terms of technology, of learning how to do things and implementing them, well, that's another thing altogether. But all of these things can very much involve the will of the people. That means that our leadership has to frankly admit when they don't know something, and that there is a tremendous teaching role in all concepts of leadership today. As we learn more, that information has to be disseminated so that everybody can make the proper decisions. It's not a conflict between people with advanced degrees and the people of the country butting heads. No, that's not how it works. What is going on right now is a very good example of, hey, we don't know what's going on. This is how we're going to learn. This is how we're going to buy time so that we can learn, and we're all going to deal with it together, all of us. And yes, you'll have to wear a mask. Okay? That, I think, is really what the lesson is here for science and public policy moving forward. That if we have a set of public policy that is really based on that mindset of the scientific method, we will do what FDR said and try things. Hopefully, we can keep track of the long term. And hopefully, we'll have some time to sit down and really think about how these changes are occurring, because there is an underlying fragility to our economy. It has not worked for everybody. That's been obvious for a long time, but we now are at a place where we absolutely have to deal with it. What are we going to do? We may not know exactly what to do right away, but we can try something. And if it fails, try something else. That's what is most important. And I think that we're learning that. It would be nice if everybody sat down and said, hey, we really don't know what we're doing. We're going to try this opening up things slowly and gradually and see how it works. But that's what's going to happen. All right, I'll see everybody.